I'm leaving you, and I've already sold our mountain cabin to start fresh with my yoga instructor." She sounded almost cheerful over the phone. I kept my voice steady, saying, "Understood. My name is Robert Davis." I was 58 years old, and for the past 28 years, I'd been a commercial property consultant working out of Denver, Colorado. My job was all about spotting potential in real estate deals that others had rushed through. Success in my field required patience, carefulness, and an eye for the small things. Unfortunately, I hadn't applied that same careful look to my own marriage until it was nearly too late. The call came on a Friday morning. I was in Berlin, finalizing a deal for a logistics center for a European client. 4 days into my trip, thousands of miles away, and Christine decided this was the perfect moment to end our 20-year marriage. "Mark and I need a new start," she continued, her voice having a confidence I recognized from countless divorce stories I'd heard from people in my line of work. The mountain cabin sold for a good price. I signed the final papers yesterday. Mark Peterson, her yoga instructor for the last 2 years. A guy in his early 40s who drove a flashy car he couldn't really afford and once, without any hesitation, asked me how much my watch was worth. I didn't slam the hotel phone down. I didn't raise my voice. I just calmly asked, "When did the sale officially close?" "Yesterday," she said, sounding a little disappointed by my calm reaction. "The new owners are moving in next week. I figured you wouldn't mind staying at the Hyatt when you get back, since you're always out of town anyway." After we hung up, I sat at the hotel desk for maybe an hour, just staring out at the Berlin skyline. Then, I opened my laptop, pulled up my email, and wrote to 2 people. Sarah Chen, who had handled my property titles for over 15 years, and Tom Wilson, my lawyer since before I even met Christine. The subject line was direct, urgent, possible fraudulent property sale. Outside my window, it started to rain on the old German streets. I watched people hurrying for cover, opening umbrellas, ducking into cafes. 20 years together, and Christine really didn't know me at all. She probably thought I was predictable, easy to push around, that I'd just accept whatever she decided. But there was one crucial detail she'd missed. You don't spend decades in property negotiation without learning how to protect what's yours. And you don't leave your valuable assets to chance, especially when your gut feeling has been quietly warning you for months that something wasn't right at home. I met Christine Adams 22 years ago at a business conference in Las Vegas. She worked for a high-end vacation rental company, all sharp suits and sharper ambition. I was impressed by her confidence, her quick thinking. Within a year, we got married at the courthouse with just her sister and my brother there. We bought the mountain cabin near Aspen, Colorado, about 4 years later. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a large deck with amazing mountain views. It cost $1.8 million, pretty much all my savings, plus a significant mortgage. I'd spend weekends fixing the worn wood, upgrading the kitchen, and replacing the rotten deck boards, while Christine focused on decorating and having friends over. "This is our forever place," she'd said, raising her wine glass on our first night there. I'd believed her. For maybe 12 years, things seemed okay. She left her job to start her own event planning business, which meant she could sometimes come with me on international work trips. I even extended my business trips so we could have long weekends in places like Paris, Rome, or Tokyo. We'd been good together, or so I thought. The first signs of trouble appeared about 3 years ago. Small things. She stopped asking about my work. She started saying no to joining me overseas. Her texts got shorter, more just checking in. "Hope meeting went well. Safe flight. No more miss you or can't wait till you're home." Then came the yoga studio membership. 5 days a week, she'd train with Mark, a former college athlete who became a yoga instructor. At first, I was supportive, happy she was focusing on fitness. But then came the unexplained charges on our credit card. Dinners I wasn't at, weekend spa trips with people I'd never met. I didn't confront her. I didn't put tracking apps on her phone or hire private investigators like some of my divorced friends had done. I just watched, made mental notes, and quietly started getting ready for what felt more and more likely to happen. 16 months ago, I transferred the mountain cabin into a living trust. The paperwork was mixed in with refinancing documents for our rental property in Boulder, Colorado. Christine signed everything without reading it, too busy looking at her phone while my lawyer waited patiently. "This protects both of us," I told her. It wasn't a complete lie. The trust structure would indeed protect the property, just not in the way she assumed. I never mentioned it again, just watched her get more distant, more attached to her phone, more uninterested in our life together. After emailing my lawyer from Berlin, I closed my laptop and got the property deed for my briefcase. I always carried it when traveling, a habit from early in my career after a client tried to back out of a deal by saying the paperwork was wrong. The deed clearly showed the Aspen property was held in the Robert Davis Living Trust, with me as the sole trustee. Christine had absolutely no legal right to sell it. The irony wasn't lost on me. Early in our marriage, she used to tease me about my obsession with paperwork and reading every contract line by line. "Life's too short for the tiny words, Robert," she'd say, laughing. But the tiny words had been the basis of my career, and now, it seemed, the way I'd save my home. I called Tom while walking through the main square in Berlin. "She can't sell something she doesn't own," he confirmed after I explained everything. "Any sale she started is invalid. The buyers have no legal standing. And Christine trying to sell property she doesn't own? That's fraud. Criminal charges are possible, though I guess you don't want that." He was right. Despite everything, I didn't want Christine in legal trouble. But I also couldn't let her take the house. "I've already alerted the county office," Tom continued. "They've put a flag on any attempts to change ownership of the property. I'll also let all the local title companies know. This sale won't happen, Robert." After we hung up, I didn't go straight back to my hotel. Instead, I found a quiet cafe and ordered a coffee. I sat there for maybe 2 hours, watching people walk by, trying to figure out how 20 years of marriage had led to this moment. What hit me wasn't anger. It was a strange kind of clear sight. The betrayal wasn't just about another man or selling our home without telling me. It was how casual and almost mean she was about it, the sound of her laughter when she gave me the news. As if my hurt was just a funny side note, as if our life together hadn't meant anything real. I sent a quick text to my client in Berlin, saying a family emergency meant I had to fly home right away. Then I booked the first flight I could find back to Colorado. On the long flight, I didn't watch movies or look at reports. I just sat quietly, a weird calm settling over me. 4 years, I'd handled complicated property deals for others, always finding the weak spots that gave my clients an advantage. Now, I would use those same skills for myself. This wasn't about getting even. It was about fairness, about getting things right. By the time the plane landed in Denver, I knew what I had to do. I wouldn't yell or beg or try to fix something that was obviously completely broken. I would just enforce the contract she'd signed but never bother to read. In property matters, signatures are always more important than intentions. Christine was about to learn that lesson the hard way. I didn't tell Christine I was coming home early. I rented a car at the airport and drove the hour and a half to Aspen in silence. It was early afternoon on a Saturday when I pulled into our driveway. A red sports car I didn't recognize was parked in my usual spot. Mark, I figured. The front door was unlocked. I could hear laughter from the kitchen, Christine and a man's voice talking about what sounded like remodeling plans. "The wall between the living room and dining area should definitely go," the man was saying. "Open space is key in mountain properties." I quietly put my suitcase down and walked toward the voices. Christine was leaning against the kitchen island in a new dress I hadn't seen, holding a glass of wine. Mark was standing behind her, his arm loosely around her waist, pointing at something on a tablet. They both looked up when I walked in. Christine's smile dropped for just a second before she pulled it back. "Robert," she said, clearly surprised, but trying to hide it. "I didn't think you'd be back until Tuesday." "Clearly," I replied, looking at Mark, who at least had enough sense to take his arm off my wife's waist. "This is awkward," Mark said with a nervous little laugh. "I should probably head out." "Actually," I said, "I'd rather you stayed. This involves you too, it seems." Christine's face got hard. "We don't need to make this messy, Robert." I've been unhappy for a long time. We both deserve a fresh start. I nodded calmly. I completely agree. Which is why I've already spoken to my lawyer about the fraudulent property sale you attempted. The color drained from her face. What are you talking about? I put my briefcase on the counter and took out the trust documents and the property deed. The mountain cabin isn't yours to sell, Christine. It hasn't been for well over a year. Mark looked confused. You said the sale was final, he said to Christine. It was, she insisted, but I could see she was starting to doubt. Check the deed, I suggested. The property is owned by the Robert Davis Living Trust. You signed the transfer papers last January. Remember those refinancing documents you didn't bother to read? She snatched the papers from my hand, scanning them quickly. This isn't possible, she whispered. Not only is it possible, it's legally binding, I continued. The sale you started is invalid. The buyer has already been informed. Mark's confident look faded. I'll just wait in the car, he mumbled, making a quick exit. Once we were alone, Christine's shock turned into anger. You tricked me, she accused. No, I corrected her. I protected my assets, which is standard practice in my line of work. You chose not to read what you were signing. That's not tricking someone. It's carelessness. She tried a different tack, her voice softening a little. Robert, let's be reasonable. We can split the money from the sale. There's no need to get lawyers involved. Except lawyers are already involved, I replied. Not just mine. The buyers are understandably upset about buying a property from someone who didn't own it. They're thinking about their own legal steps. You wouldn't, she whispered. I'm not doing anything, I clarified. I'm simply making sure the legal ownership of the property is followed. What happens next is entirely up to how you decide to handle this. Christine's face hardened again. She grabbed her phone from the counter. I'm calling my sister's lawyer. You won't get away with this. I didn't argue, just nodded and said, You should definitely talk to a lawyer. I'll be staying at the Sheraton downtown tonight to give you some space, but just so we're clear, this house is not being sold, and I'll be moving back in on Monday. As I turned to leave, she called after me, This isn't finished, Robert. I looked back at her, standing in the kitchen we'd redone together, still holding the wine glass. Actually, Christine, I think it is. Sunday morning, I met with Tom at his office. The place was quiet, none of the usual staff around on a weekend. Tom looked tired but determined as he spread several papers across his desk. There's more, he said right away. I had my investigator do some digging after your call. He pushed a folder toward me. Inside were bank statements, credit card bills, and property records I'd never seen. Christine's been busy, Tom went on. She opened a separate account about 18 months ago, moved roughly $210,000 from your joint savings. The number hit me hard. That was most of our ready cash for emergencies. There's also this, he added, sliding another document forward. Early paperwork for a commercial spot in Phoenix, Arizona. Leases in both her name and Mark Peterson's. They're planning to open a wellness center. Signed about 5 months ago. I just stared at the pages, trying to make sense of it. This wasn't just a sudden affair. This was calculated, planned out. They'd been working towards this for months, maybe even longer. The timing makes sense now, I said, more to myself than Tom. She wasn't just selling the house for divorce money. She needed funds for this business. Tom nodded. And one more thing. The buyer for your mountain cabin? It's a holding company. Guess who owns it? Mark's brother, Stephen Peterson. They were trying to get the house for less than it's worth through a fake sale, then probably sell it quickly for a profit after you found out and had to negotiate. Everything clicked into place with a sickening feeling. This wasn't just Christine leaving me for another guy. This was a deliberate financial plan to get as much money as possible before ending our marriage. I felt something inside me change. The quiet acceptance I'd felt since her phone call turned into something colder, sharper. This wasn't just about keeping what was mine anymore. It was about holding them accountable. What are my options? I asked. Tom leaned back in his chair. Legally, you're in a very strong position. The trust protects the house. We can freeze the joint accounts to stop her from moving more money. As for the money she's already taken. He paused. That's trickier. Colorado is an equitable distribution state. She could argue it was her share of marital money. But the fake sale attempt? That's our leverage. It's criminal fraud, possibly grand larceny, depending on how a prosecutor sees it. But I'm guessing you don't want to see your wife go to jail. He was right. Despite everything, I didn't want that, but I also wouldn't be taken advantage of. Here's what I suggest, Tom continued, pulling out another paper. A divorce settlement that's fair but firm. She returns $140,000 of the money she took. She gives up all claims to the mountain cabin and other properties in the trust. Robert gives up any right to her new business and agrees not to press criminal charges. I looked at the draft agreement, thinking about my choices. And if she says no? Tom's expression was serious. Then we give this evidence to the district attorney, Tom replied simply. Fraud over $100,000 carries serious punishments in Colorado. Her lawyer put a hand on her arm to stop her. We need to talk about this privately. They left the room for about 25 minutes. When they came back, Christine wouldn't look at me. We accept the terms, her lawyer stated. I didn't say anything, didn't act like I'd won, just signed where Tom showed me and watched Christine do the same. Her signature was as familiar to me as my own after 20 years of shared tax forms, holiday cards, and anniversary notes. It was over. 5 months later, I stood on the deck of the mountain cabin, coffee in hand, watching the sun come up over the peaks. The property looked different now. I'd updated the kitchen, replaced the old wood with something tougher, and put in new energy-efficient windows everywhere. The changes weren't just practical. They felt symbolic, wiping away the old to make space for something new. I'd heard through friends we used to have that Christine and Mark had opened their wellness center in Phoenix, but it was smaller than they'd planned. The business was struggling, apparently. I didn't feel any happiness about that news. No joy in her troubles, just a quiet sadness for what could have been if different choices had been made. The divorce was finalized 5 months ago. Clean. Complete. The settlement terms were followed without any more problems. Christine had returned the agreed-upon money, which I immediately invested in a commercial building downtown in Denver. A small office building with solid renters and reliable income. My phone rang. Sarah Chen, my title agent. Just checking in, she said when I answered. How's the mountain cabin? Getting better every day, I replied, watching a few eagles glide across the sky. Thanks again for your help with setting up that trust. That's what friends are for, she said. Actually, I'm calling because I found another investment property that might interest you. Similar setup to what we did with the mountain cabin, but commercial, good protection, steady income. Send me the details, I said. I'm interested. After we hung up, I kept watching the mountains. The peaks stood tall and steady, unchanging in their presence. There was comfort in that sameness, that natural order that couldn't be messed with or taken away. I finished my coffee and headed inside to get ready for work. The house was just a building, wood and glass and concrete, but it was mine, and sometimes that's enough.